it's a story about a girl and her sword, but it's really about the struggle of saving the ones you love, even though you might not agree with them, or it's about the world we live in now. It's about how what morals really are and what it means to actually be a moral person.
Fitz of Writing.
Hey there, Scribbles and Scratches. This is Sean, your host for the evening. I've been tasked to come up with a quippy and creative introduction this season, just like Ryan's from last season, but we all know why we're here. We're here to talk about a story and talk about storytelling, so that's good enough for me. It'll be good enough for Ryan. If you like what you watch here, like, comment, subscribe, follow us on all the platforms. Tonight, we are talking to a guest at the behest of our patron, Sir Dr. Duncan Cackleworth. He is on book 2 of the Ephisian Saga. He is a hitchhiking extraordinaire, as well as a former programmer. We present to you Mr. Chris Brooks. How are you tonight, Chris?
Hi, how you doing? I'm good.
Good. If you've watched these episodes with author interviews, you know we generally like to start with an introduction to the person telling the stories. So, if you would, where does your story begin? I do remember seeing some interesting details that you submitted in your interview form. So, share a little
Yes,
bit about that.
as a teenager, I did travel around the United States by hitchhiking. Was able to hitchhike through pretty much all the continental United States, even up to Alaska. I don't do that anymore. I don't think anybody does, but yeah, that was one thing I did. I also went to college, finished my degree, and I was always into programming, even as a child. I would start on TRS-80s. I was allowed to go into a Radio Shack. The manager let me work on their boxes. So my first introduction to computers was the TRS-80 Model 1, Level 1. And I just loved computers from there. I went on professionally. I was a professional developer, worked for places like Priceline, WorldSpan, and a few, many big companies, a lot of insurance companies, the normal corporate schlub on all that. Left that in 2018 and started writing games, and this is my first novel series, so that's where I'm at.
So, have you put out any games for that people would be able to play on? Are you able to say or anything like that, or was it?
First thing I created once in a game. Actually, it was called Raffle Blast, and it was I actually used it with the American Cancer Society, able to drawing for their Relay for Life and stuff, to do drawings for them. And I posted that on Steam, and then I built a game called Primeval. It was a interesting game, able to I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but you would build little worlds, and the little worlds would fight each other. And so you could build a hex-based map, and it actually combined your two maps together, and then that was your board for essentially a medieval fantasy warfare. It didn't go anywhere. Didn't really get any traction for it. So in the end, it just wasn't worth keeping the servers up. So it went. And then I was working on another game when I started this book called Catacomb Crashers, where essentially it's a game where you have these monsters, and the monsters have abilities. You get 6 actions to take, and they traverse the map and fight each other. You might be able to find that on videos of mine, but I didn't go live with that at this point yet. and I kind of moved over to writing this book series, which is another thing I've always wanted to do, was to write was this, and it actually did start as a game called Chronicles of Orlin.
Okay.
Some of the characters in that game that I was creating, that I was working on, was ended up being are in this book. Penelope Dubois is one, Laddie, Tommy. Those are characters actually that were in my, and that game never got more than just rough draft. So it was, but I was like, I really want to work on the lore of this game. And then I was like, it evolved kind of into this entire story where everything that I was, always had in the back of my mind going, I brought forth into the story. And the book series is much better than the game ever would have been, I believe. So.
I liked what I read from your sample. It looks like you've got an interesting premise with a lot of backstory to be explored. The I thought that was funny that you mentioned that it was a game, because that's actually how my debut novel, The Bleeding Divine, I tried to make a video game um, because of watching Grandma's Boy and seeing the main character in there designing a game all on his own. But I can't.
Mhm.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, that was a great
Sidestepping.
movie.
I love that movie.
The evil developer guy, I forget his name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember that movie.
But yeah, I mean, it's tough to write a game and everything, and you have to be really, really organized in the ways that you're going after it. From what I've seen, I never really made it past like the 3D modeling and animation phase
Mhm.
to get into the real nuts and bolts of it. But I am a real nuts and bolts like oriented person. If I'd have got that far, I might have made it. But I'm happy that it's a novel, and I think that, just like you, I think it fits better as a fully fleshed out story. And
But in my original displays of that, my original videos for it, you have Tavern on the Point, which is where this book opens up. You have Port Slip, and all of that. Slappy's, which is like this little restaurant next to it. That's all in that game already modeled.
that's fun.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
You for those of you who pick the book up, you'll notice a couple of things he just mentioned right there in the first chapter. And Slappy sounds like if this doesn't work out, maybe you can get into sea lion training and see if there's not a way to kind of come to market with something like that. And that's all I will say about it. But regarding I did have a couple of questions about the story, some other things that I wondered if maybe you were inspired by. But before we get that, why don't you kind of talk about the Ephesian Saga? Is Subjugation out now?
Subjugation it's finishing formatting right now, so
Okay.
it's being formatted, and it should be out 1st of March is what I'm shooting for.
Okay.
So the back cover's done, all of the cover work's done. The formatting of the inside, is all finished, so that scene breaks don't end in the wrong place or broken lines or anything. All of the formatting of the physical book are done. All the proofing, everything's complete. So it should be ready to go next week or the week after would be Subjugation. And then I've got a campaign with Michael coming up in March, in mid-March. So
Gotcha.
where it's I'll have giveaways for both Chronicles and Subjugation, and the whole takeovers and all that.
All right. Subjugation being the second installment in the Ephesian Saga, Chronicles of Orlessia being the first.
Yes.
Do you have a game plan for how many installments you're looking to have in this saga, or are you just planning on running with it as far as you can?
It's probably 4. It seems like it's breaking out to 4. Originally, I thought 3, but the way the timeline in the game in the story is, it seems to be like there'll be this next one coming out and then one after that.
Okay. That's a nice long spanning storyline. Your main character is Izzy, and she is I'm getting, all of the strong female character main character vibes and everything from her, but I think that her pairing with her sword is a very cool thing. Do you want to share as much about that as you feel comfortable sharing so that people can kind of get like her her cohort?
Yes. Baal is an evil sword. He's an ancient demonic sword, I guess you could say, and he his whole goal is to eat souls, and her whole goal is to save people. She doesn't like, she's very moral, I guess you could say, to a degree. But that's how it opens up. In general, it's a story about a girl and her sword, but it's really about the struggle of saving the ones you love, even though you might not agree with them, or it's about the world we live in now. It's about what morals really are and what it means to actually be a moral person. How do you compromise? What's the difference between the decisions you make and and what morality is, I guess. As far as Baal goes, he's kind of a hardened force of nature, but he's also he's not as evil as you think he is. He's not as ruthless as you think he is. He's a destroyer of worlds. I mean, he will kill everything. He hates. He doesn't hate. He lives off of. He's a vampire, so essentially he lives off the souls of everyone around him. But with Izzy, he has changed to a point where it becomes more of a symbiotic relationship and actually a love between them. That a love bonded in rage, I guess. A love forged in death, and they both need each other.
I think there's an interesting dichotomy there to go between. I'm just going to call him another main character, and we don't have to get into any spoilers for what happens. People can read the back of the novel for what the first book generally is about. But I think that there is a good dichotomy there between somebody who would prefer to go the moral high road versus somebody who's not bothered by getting dirty and doing questionable or downright evil looking things to accomplish the same goal. And there's probably some good writing in your novel to really kind of flesh that out and to start a discussion amongst your readers. And I thought that was really interesting. It reminded me of an old game series that I played called the Legacy of Kain series, with the Soul Reaver blade being on there. I didn't know if that was any partial inspiration for you or anything, but it is a vampiric and soul devouring sword that a lot of it doesn't have a personality or anything. But it is involved in a lot of historical events throughout that gothic storyline. And
well, Baal is definitely a main character. He's a full-fledged character. He's not just a mindless implement for her. He acts for Izzy. He kind of acts as her scapegoat in many ways. He makes the hard decisions for her in order to protect her. It's very so he loves being the evil because then she can be the good. But in essence, they're both. It's the way they play off each other. It's hard to explain it, kind of, but they need each other in that way. That she needs him to take that burden from her, because she knows that in the world that they live in, you can't live with the morals that. So by him being the one to always, be the evil one, it actually helps her keep her sanity. And so when she, in the book, she loses him. He goes dormant, saving her, and that's in the synopsis. You see that on the Amazon page. So when she loses him, the book kind of opens up where they're fighting. They're kind of squabbling. He doesn't want to be in Port Slip because there's nobody to kill. And plus they're going to go meet a technologist who he doesn't like, because obviously he doesn't trust someone who wants to collect technology because he is technology. So anyway, he's in a bad mood when this starts, right? And they're kind of squabbling, almost like siblings would, where she's just like, they're kind of going back and forth. Well, when he ends up sacrificing himself, Izzy's world just shatters because Izzy has had him in her life and in her mind for 10 years at this point. And yes, they were squabbling with each other, but it is devastating to Izzy to lose him. And so that's where no longer that moral filter, that scapegoat, or whatever you want to call him, that's gone. And she has to come to a realization of, do I forever lose Baal, or is there some way I can get him back? And if there is, do I want to totally alter my moral structure in order to do so? And so that's where you call that the inciting incident. The loss of Baal brings everything to Izzy to all of a sudden her whole life changes. It's a whole point of everything she thinks she isn't really what she is. What will she do now for the thing that she loves deeply, the companion she has had for 10 years of her life, So that's where the premise of the story is. But the bigger picture of the story is the world we kind of live in now, this world of mega corporations who, have, control over everything, when really under the hood it's almost like a shadow government or a shadow way of being. So she exists in this world. She doesn't realize the bigger world. And that, and then the whole history of Baal comes into play. That's about all I'll leave that as far as that description goes, because that's getting more towards subjugation.
Sure. And I probably want to keep that one a little
That
bit
wasn't
behind
too
the veil.
much.
No, you're doing great.
And it's much deeper. The whole story is much deeper than just a girl with her sword and they're killing everybody. That's the minimum of the story. The actual story is so much deeper than that. This relationship between her and Baal becomes this bond. It's just, people who've read it are. It's hard to explain it almost, but people who've read it are. The bond between these two is just so powerful in the whole series.
It's definitely an intriguing way to write a woman and her weapon, but also just two main characters for a story that, and what sounds like a bit of a rescue operation and a should I, could I, can I kind of thing too for the first book. I'll ask one question about Subjugation. Is Baal back for?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So in his glory. He's back in his glory. The second book, the first book is wonderful for laying down the foundation. It's wonderful for a simple hero's journey almost, if you want to read it that way, but it's, much deeper than that. But you can read it on that level. It's a hero's journey. She's got a quest. She's going to go do it, The second book goes into where his origins are, the actual worlds we live in that she was always brought up to be. In a lot of ways, you can think, if you want to pattern it after a modern day, Ephes, which is the country, is a lot like North Korea, I guess you could say. It's patterned in a way of you keep the people in a certain vacuum, therefore you could kind of control them. So she finds out the bigger world is out there in the second book, more so than the first. And so that becomes Baal can finally tell her things that he wasn't able to tell her in the first book. And she could see actually the true world she lives in. And it's more enlightening in Subjugation. Whereas the first is, yes, it's a hero's journey. She's there trying to get to the bringing him back to life. And, Baal's back.
Gotcha. I think that that's at least a good amuse bouche for the second book, which by the time this airs, it will hopefully be out. We'll have a link down in the description. I'd kind of like to switch the pacing away from the story into the writing process and how you wrote it. The first question that I did want to ask you was, like, with all of the traveling that you've done in your younger days and everything, and the kind of people that you know undoubtedly met, um, do you think that that kind of helped with the way that you write and plan out your stories?
I don't fall into that. There's no character in this book. I don't have an ex-wife in this book, or I'm not sitting there, hate scrolling somebody. There's nobody in this book that came from my real life. Okay. So are there ideas and concepts? Maybe, but I kind of look at them more. I look at the characters more as I give them a personality, and then I just kind of let them guide it. I'm kind of a pantser, actually. I kind of know where I want to go, but I don't outline it all out. I sometimes let, especially you'll see that between Izzy and Baal and just their conversations. They just flow naturally between their personalities, more so than I plotted in that they have to say this and they have to do that. So in some ways, I kind of let them off, almost like an object-oriented programming. I know how they act and what their thoughts are, and so they kind of play off of those. I put them in a situation and let them and think how they would play it, how they would end up doing it. In fact, the magic system is based on C#. So there's a lot of programming in the book, kind of.
Okay.
And so they're kind of that way too. You could think of them as objects. So Izzy acts and does things that essentially her personality would probably define. It's kind of hard to explain to a degree, but so they're not patterned after a real world person. And I didn't say, oh, I knew this person back here, and now this is their personification in the book. So no, I didn't really pattern it after that, or even scenarios I knew in real life.
What about settings, like just places that you've been and seen? Does that kind of help you map out like a setting?
Yeah, and that's in the second book. But the whole world is based in this world.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, go ahead and dive deeper into that one then.
Okay, there was a cataclysm. Well, there's a cataclysm. It's called the Turning.
Okay.
And during the Turning, the world changed. It switched back. It switched. The plane shifted. It's hard for me to explain without giving everything away. But during the Turning, before the Turning, there was no races. There were just humans, hominids. Okay. There weren't any new races. Okay. When the Turning came, it changed everybody. Everybody reverted to their races that they are now. So you have satyrs, you have horn people, Neander, you have Dravs, you have magic came back to the land. So you could think of a Shadowrun kind of a situation, right? And when magic came back to the land, a group of 5 families chose to bunker down because they knew about it. 5 wealthy families knew that something was going to happen. And those became essentially, for Ephes, those are worshipped as gods. That family is those 5 families are worshipped as gods.
Okay.
So now they're god-like being. They're not gods though; they're just people. But so they built Ephes in their name. So they built Ephes as a kingdom or an oligarchy, technically. And so Izzy lives in that world. But before the Turning, it was us. Okay. So the places in the book, and mainly in Subjugation, but in Orlessia, are based on places that exist, but changed because of the turning. So, for example, the Great Fungal Swamp. It's a it used to be a polluted cesspool of 5 lakes that were linked together. So, what are 5 great lakes that are linked
I was gonna
together
say, is that like the Great Lakes then?
are now the Great Fungal Swamp.
Huh.
So,
Okay.
the world is actually our world post turning. And when the turning came, it's like everything combined. So there's another plane they combined together, and they created kind of stamped. So it's hard to explain it, but it's all explained easily in the book. But that's in the second book that goes into all of that, as far as what the turning actually was. But it's very key to the books, both to the whole series.
I think that that's a really like awesome way to kind of crash the world you've created into a real the real world. So what kind of that like leads to the big question that I had for this interview was like what inspired that world building idea in you that you wanted to keep the old real world and just add your fantasy elements to it.
Um, I don't know, really. I guess it came from, games like Shadowrun, I guess, to a point, as far as magic came back to the land. But it even goes back to, say, the Younger Dryads, where magic existed before. Maybe Camelot was real. Maybe Antediluvian was real. Maybe that was pre-turning, but that was the turning before. So think of a planar shift of we went through a time of turning where dragons were real and the wizards were real. It was all there. But then during the Ice Age, everything switched over, and then we were back to our non-magical selves. So we're all hominids now. We're all humans. Or there were a few races, Neanderthal and such, but we were a lot less diverse, let's say. But the legends were still there. The legends of Atlantis, the legends of and the stones are still there, like Göbekli Tepe and whatever.
Yeah.
So then what happens 12,000 years later is that switch gets flipped again. And that's essentially the premise of the turning. Okay. So we had found an element called Cryon. And this element was found by a corporation called Elsa. That name is kind of interesting, but it's called Elsa. This corporation mined this element off of Amalthea and outside of Jupiter, on the moon of Jupiter called Amalthea. And they wanted to build. We had destroyed the planet. The planet is really in bad shape. So they built a colony ship called Elsa Prime. And this is all in the first book, so I will go into it. Elsa Prime was a huge ship made for people to leave here and go onto an exoplanet, right?
Okay.
So when they were about to do this, and people were up there, the wealthy that could get up there, that could pay their ticket, could get up there, and they were all ready to leave this planet to its, to Satan and his slaves. The turning hit, and the turning not only changed everything. Let's just say we had to relearn the entire periodic table of elements because it changed everything on a molecular level. So their huge ship up there was a tomb because life support systems no longer existed. Now for 5,000 years, for what was it? 2,200 years, it just kind of orbited the Earth as a moon, the ship, this dead ship. But the Arbalists of Ephes, the ones those 5 family who originally predicted it, they didn't go to Elsa Prime because they knew it was going to fail. So those 5 ultimate elite families that stayed on Earth, um, when they knew that Elsa Prime would eventually fall, and they kind of knew where it would fall, and they wanted that Cryon
Oh, okay.
because that Cryon is very powerful stuff, which is all explained in the book. So they kind of, they're in government now, and the Cryon did fall. The Elsa Prime did fall, and it created a huge crater called the Fingerprint of the Gods, which has big reserves of Cryon under it. And they mine the Cryon, and there's a whole race of elves that are called necrotic elves that are kind of resistant to Cryon. So all of that history happened about 3,000 years after the turning, and the story takes place right now in 3917, so 3,900 years after the turning.
Okay.
3,900 AT. So
AT. I was gonna
that's where
say,
it's at.
I thought that might be what the turning is mentioned in your first chapter.
Right.
So I was kind of building that time frame in my head. You got a little science fiction going on like for a second, but then you force it into being a fantasy with the turning, and I think that's pretty
It's
cool.
both. Yeah, it's a sci-fi. It's definitely both. There is the fantasy is actually that to them. They don't realize the world. Izzy doesn't realize the bigger world she lives in. She knows about Elsa Prime. You can't hide this thing that was spinning around that created an entire crater. There's certain things Ephes can't hide, but what they can hide, they certainly do. So I mean, Cryon, they couldn't hide Cryon. They couldn't hide Elsa Prime. They couldn't hide the fact that before this era, there was a technological civilization that built that system. So she knows certain things, but everything else, she has to learn over time. And Baal tries to keep her in the dark to protect her to some degrees. He doesn't want to tell her because there's something called the facade. You have to keep up the facade if you're in the know, or people get killed if things like that.
A lot of conditionals.
Oh yeah. So anyway, that's how it works.
Yeah, I think that you've got a really well flushed out world there, with a lot of good backstory to get explored, and everybody should read Subjugation if you want everything laid out without any kind of veil held over it. Between the 2 books, what part of the writing process has been the most difficult for you to get over, and what did you do to get over it?
When I first started, I mean, I wasn't an author by trade, so it took a little bit to figure out what the way modern day books work, as far as show don't tell, or all of the little nuances you have to do where you don't want, everybody wants their character essentially in first person, and this character is mainly written in the POV of Izzy in more of the second person, limited maybe, versus I'm the one in there feeling all of this. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're dealing with Baal and Izzy, you can't be that close to have. You kind of have to be in both of their points of view sometimes. Whereas if you're just jumping into Izzy's point of view all the time, it's not going to work. So it's a third person limited more versus a first person type of a story frame. So trying to keep my point of view correct was some of the things I struggled with, because I'm dealing with very complex. Because not only is Baal a separate character, but he's also inside of Izzy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They speak telepathically, but they're inside of each other, So it's almost like a 1.5 character, I guess you would say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
I can imagine
trying
that.
to bring that in as your first book instead of just basic dialogues between two people it's kind of a struggle sometimes because you're dealing with, yes, he is two people, but he's also at the same time deep inside of her mind. So the POV actually has to be both of them, you know.
I kind of got that just from reading the first chapter, and like before anything dramatic happened, just the kind of, you did a good job of sort of making them seem like they were very well used to each other and almost at some points annoyed by one another.
Yes.
Almost like siblings.
Yes.
So when you were creating that relationship, when you were putting it to paper, was there any kind of special trick that reminded you of how to go about that, or did you just really kind of take your time? And did that sense of like Baal's basically a half a character because the other half of him is within Izzy kind of just drive how that came out?
No, not really. They kind of see, Baal has more of a, he knows more than Izzy, so he's more than Izzy is. You see what I'm saying? So as far as it goes, I create, they're like, it's almost back to what I said before. They're little objects that they kind of built themselves almost to a degree, their personalities. And so as far as it works with them, it's not that cut and dry. I didn't, it's not like I plotted them out, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I liked what you said earlier, where you kind of just put them almost in a room together and you were just tracking down what they were saying to each other.
Yeah.
And then you
And
took the story
that's a
from there.
great way of it's almost like I'm just taking dictation. Yeah, it's bizarre in a way.
I've talked to a few authors that have that have gone that route and let that kind of drive their story. So I don't think you're doing anything wrong there at all. I think that with the kind of relationship that your two characters have there, it's probably a smart way to do it because their relationship's the driving force for the saga anyway, it seems.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, good on you for doing that. That I think that was probably the best decision you could have made, even though it was during the most difficult part.
Yeah, I don't think any of their interactions, or at least many of them, come across as false. They seem to come across as completely genuine the way that they treat each other.
Definitely came
Across the
across that way.
board. And I mean, even, they're not like stuck in, you can't find me in there. That's what, I guess that's one thing. That's a good way for me to say it. I'm not in there. You don't see me. Now you will see me in some of the descriptions, but you don't really see me in their interactions. You see what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah. And if that's if as long as it's not a self-insert, we have feelings
And it's
about
not.
those.
Absolutely not. In fact, there's a whole discourse in the second book, which is hilarious. See, Nodin, Dua, and Baal are well read, and they're well read from our time. So they're having a discussion on whether Izzy is a Mary Sue or a damsel. And Izzy's like, "What are you talking about?" Because she's never read any of these. And Dua comes up and says, "Well, Baal is both the wizard and the ring, a true MacGuffin." And so they're all having this interaction with this, with the whole concept of that's essentially kind of breaking the fourth wall, but not really,
Right.
And this whole interaction with all four of them is like, it's just hilarious, and it's not really that I inserted anything about me in there or anything, but the way it plays off is just hilarious. And there's all kinds of things in there like that with her and with the way that the Baal interacts with everybody.
I like that, a self-aware fantasy story.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. Well, if anybody wants to get their hands on, anybody who sees this when the video drops, your book should be out. So where is the best place to get a copy of Subjugation, and just so they know what's happening there, Chronicles of Orlessia?
it'll be on Amazon, so it's on Amazon. I think it might be in Ingram too.
Okay.
And so yeah, but it's primarily on Amazon.
All
And
right.
then if I do an audiobook, I did an audiobook for the first one, but if I do an audiobook, I think the audiobooks also go to Apple,
Oh, cool. All right.
but they're on Amazon and on Audible, and they go to Apple as well, I believe, because I go through ACX for that.
Oh,
But
okay. Gotcha. That's
I
what I
may
did too.
actually redo the original audiobook. I wasn't really. I kind of thinking, hearing it now a year later, I've kind of thought about maybe redoing it and having having it done differently. Um, it's okay. I mean, it works, but it's kind of, you know how you read something you did a year later, you listen to something you did a year later, and you're like, I don't really like Baal's voice in that
Okay.
audiobook. I don't
Yeah.
I In my mind his voice is different than in that audiobook, and I don't know. I might redo the audiobook. But right now it's there, it's on Audible.
Okay, well, if people want to keep in touch with you and watch what you're doing, watch out for the next installment, or to see if you do decide to redo your audiobook for the first and or second books, where are the best places for folks to follow you?
Facebook is probably the best place to follow me. I am on Instagram, but I don't really do anything there. And I'm not on Twitter or TikTok or anything else at this time. So that's
Okay,
probably Facebook is probably the primary.
all right.
Well, it's definitely the primary.
Well,
And
I'll
then
put the link to the Facebook to your Facebook page, which I believe is Chronicles of Orlessia.
yeah, I know I'm gonna have to change that to just that was written for the original book, and then I was still working on. I should have named it Ephisian Saga, but I named it Chronicles of Orlessia essentially.
Oh well,
Before I
what
messed up.
you can rename it whenever you're ready,
Yeah,
and I'll try to keep an eye out to make sure, and I can always adjust the video descriptions and everything. But as it is right now, I'll put that down, the link to your handle down in the video description. Uh, is there anything else that you wanted to say to everybody about the story, about you, about checking out the books, or maybe a ETA on installment 3?
yeah. I mean, I apologize if I've rambled. I guess I kind of ramble about it. There's so much in this story. There's so many levels to this book, to this series, that for me to try to encompass it all, and it's if you like a deep story that's understandable, you're gonna love it. You know, um, and it's on so many levels. I can't even begin to describe how in depth this book actually is, but manageable, but consumable. It's not just a girl and her sword. It is much beyond that, and I can't stress it enough. Everyone who's ever read the whole story is astounded by it. Um, so hopefully, you know, I can get that much across. I guess.
Well, great. I think that it's definitely an awesome premise. It's got a good, deep character dichotomy that we've discussed and everything. I think that there's a lot of cool little Easter eggs and like the
Oh, there's tons
self-awareness.
of Easter egg. Some of
Yeah.
the things Ball says will just you will be rolling. He is hilarious.
Okay, well, I want everybody to remember, just yesterday we reposted the Tuesday Tell It Tale. It is a monthly promo now where if you guys are submitting stuff to us, a 300 to 700 word short story or a poem, we're going to pick the one we think is the best at the end of the month, and then we're going to release a video with that image, your writing, as well as an audio with a little bit of music behind it at the end of the month. So go ahead and get your submissions in for that. If you have time enough to sit down, you got a few minutes to bang out a quick short story. We're looking forward to seeing what everybody's got. If you enjoyed all of this, like I said, follow Chris, follow the channel, subscribe to us, strike the like, semper scribe. There you go, Ryan. That's all for you. I'm thinking we're going to fade to black.